There are moments when the soul whispers truths that the rational mind refuses to accept. You feel a connection so deep with someone that neither time, circumstances, nor even their commitment to another person can erase it. And then the doubt arises. Is any of this real? Is this connection merely fantasy, or does it have a greater purpose? When it comes to mirror souls, there are no coincidences, only signs. Signs that appear in dreams, synchronistic encounters, sudden intuitions, and that unshakable sense that something is about to happen. In this video, we'll explore the spiritual signals that reveal the imminent return of a twin flame, even if they are married to someone else. There is a deeper movement taking place, and perhaps you are being called to see it with the eyes of the soul. Comment below, "I trust in the divine timing of my soul." When we observe the journey of twin flames through the lens of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, we enter a profound understanding of the soul and the individuation processes that shape our most transformative relationships. Jung believed that each human being carries unconscious aspects that must be brought into awareness, and the twin flame, by its archetypal nature, mirrors those very aspects. The other becomes a living mirror, reflecting our shadows, our wounds, and also our highest potential. The presence of a twin flame who is married to someone else directly challenges the ego and summons the soul to deep maturity. Jung spoke of projection as a natural stage of initial love, when we project onto the other what we have yet to recognize in ourselves. But as we evolve, we are invited to withdraw those projections and integrate the shadow, all that we have rejected within ourselves. The separation or physical distance from a married twin flame can be precisely the catalyst for this process. Reconnection is not based merely on desire, but on individuation, the path of return to the self, where our inner feminine and masculine are harmonized. The return of a twin flame, therefore, is not only an outer event, it happens first within, when balance is achieved between the animus, the inner masculine of the woman, and the anima, the inner feminine of the man. Once that balance is reached, reunion can naturally occur as a consequence of soul integration. If all of this resonates with you, stay with me. The pain of being separated from a twin flame, especially when they are committed to someone else, can feel unbearable. Yet from the Jungian perspective, that separation is not merely an external circumstance. It reflects an inner division. Jung taught that everything that disturbs us outside ourselves reveals something yet to be integrated within. In this sense, the distance between twin flames is a symbolic manifestation of an inner disconnect, a disconnection from parts of the soul still hidden in the shadow. For Jung, the shadow is the collection of psychic contents that were repressed, denied, or forgotten during personal development. It contains aspects deemed unacceptable, fragile, aggressive, or vulnerable, but also carries immense creative and transformative potential. When you meet your twin flame, that shadow is powerfully activated. The twin flame functions as a mirror that reveals both the light and the wounds that still need healing. As painful as separation may seem, it is a call to descend into the unconscious and confront those hidden contents. If your twin flame is married to someone else, this may symbolically represent a part of you still emotionally entangled in old patterns, with the version of yourself that has not yet freed itself from conditioning, insecurities, and ego expectations. The external relationship merely mirrors an internal dynamic crying out for healing. This stage of the journey is essential. Jung asserted that true transformation only occurs when we have the courage to look within and accept everything we encounter there, including ambivalent feelings, anger, jealousy, abandonment, and the fear of rejection. The twin flame awakens the deepest love, but also the oldest pains. It reopens wounds that may have lain dormant for years, not to punish, but to illuminate. As you dive into this process, you'll realize that separation is not punishment, but opportunity. It offers space for you to recognize yourself beyond projections. Under the spell of initial passion, we tend to project onto our twin flame all we have idealized: perfection, salvation, completeness. But those images are ego constructions. The soul wants more than idealizations. It longs for authenticity and integration. Accepting separation as a necessary movement does not mean resigning yourself to pain, but understanding that this distance can be a rite of passage. When you embrace the shadow, you begin to free yourself from the bonds that keep your energy tied to suffering. Once acknowledged, the shadow no longer sabotages, you it guides. At that moment, the focus shifts from the other to reuniting with yourself. It is in this process that the true return of the twin flame quietly begins. It is not about forcing reconciliation, but about creating the psychic and energetic space for it to happen, if it is the soul's timing. Often reunion only becomes possible when both have individually traversed that shadowy territory and emerged more whole, not needy, but aware. So, when you find yourself viewing your twin flame's marriage as an insurmountable barrier, pause and ask, what does this reveal about me? What remains unhealed within me? Which part of me still believes it is unworthy of being chosen? The answer lies in the depths of your being, and it is there that liberation begins. In moments of silence, when reason can no longer explain what we feel, something deeper begins to speak. These are the signs: recurring dreams, repeated numbers, songs that pop into your head carrying specific messages, sudden feelings of connection at random times. It all seems random, but according to Jung, there are no coincidences, only synchronicity. And on the journey with a twin flame, synchronicities are the silent language the collective unconscious uses to guide the soul toward wholeness. Jung defined synchronicity as the meaningful coincidence of an inner psychological state with an external event, where there is no causal relationship but a symbolic connection. When we think of a twin flame married to someone else, it's natural for the ego to react with pain, frustration, and helplessness. However, if we begin to observe events with the eyes of the soul, we realize the universe never stops communicating. It merely changes language, moving from rational control to the language of symbols. During separation, it is common for those experiencing a twin flame connection to notice repetitive patterns, vivid dreams of reunion, sudden sensations of the other's presence despite physical distance, indirect messages arriving through third parties, special dates coinciding with emotional events. Taken in isolation, these experiences may seem like wishful thinking, but when they recur consistently, coherently, and with deep emotion, they reveal a dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious, a movement pointing to a path still unfolding. Synchronicities emerge especially when there is an internal openness to transformation. This does not mean every sign should be interpreted as a literal promise of the other's immediate return. It means the soul is aligning with a greater truth, and that truth may involve the return of the twin flame, but only from a new version of yourself. It is the unconscious offering clues, symbolic keys, flashes of possible futures, and the more you listen without anxiety, the more intense the signs become. This phenomenon is also an energetic alignment. When you are emotionally stuck in the pain of separation, you vibrate at the frequency of fear and lack. But when you begin to see signs as reminders that a purpose is unfolding, you align with the soul's flow, and everything around you starts responding. The outer world mirrors your inner state, and the signs become clearer, more specific, almost as if they were direct answers to your silent thoughts. In Jungian psychology, this openness to synchronicity is a sign that the unconscious is actively participating in the individuation journey. Instead of closing off under the ego's expectations, the individual opens to mystery, symbol, and the sacred. This transforms the relationship with time and with the other. The twin flame's return ceases to be an obsession and becomes a spiritual process of reunion, not only with the other person, but with one's own essence. There is something even deeper. Synchronicities also manifest as small dress rehearsals of destiny. Sometimes we cross paths with someone who reminds us of our twin flame. Other times we randomly meet someone who knows them and mentions them unexpectedly. All of this triggers emotions, memories, and internal decisions. It is not coincidence, it is preparation. The soul is organizing itself for something the conscious mind does not yet see, but is quietly moving behind the scenes of time. Therefore, when signs begin to emerge, do not treat them with suspicion or hurry. Listen, reflect. Allow yourself to dive into the symbolism behind each encounter, each dream, each sensation. They are coded messages from the soul, invisible guides on the path back. And if you heed them with your heart, you will see you are not alone. You are being guided back to something that was never truly lost. One of the central ideas in Jung's psychology is that within each person, there exist two fundamental principles, masculine and feminine. He called these archetypes the animus and anima. The animus is the unconscious image of the masculine inhabiting the feminine psyche, while the anima is the unconscious image of the feminine within the masculine. On the soul's journey, especially in the twin flame experience, meeting the other intensely awakens these principles, making visible any internal disharmony or lack of integration. When your twin flame is married to someone else, the ego naturally interprets this as personal rejection or an insurmountable obstacle. But on an archetypal level, the situation represents something far deeper, the need for inner union. The other is externally inaccessible because the reunion has not yet been made possible internally. The true bond between twin flames only forms when the masculine and feminine within you are balanced. Jung did not speak of gender but of energy. Feminine energy relates to receptivity, intuition, sensitivity, and symbolic gestation. Masculine energy connects with action, direction, logic, and symbolic penetration of consciousness. In many cases, those desperately seeking a twin flame's return are immersed in an imbalance of these principles. Either they are overly receptive and passive, waiting for the other to take initiative, or they are excessively active, trying to force destiny with control and anxiety. Neither stance leads to true union. Integrating these aspects comes through consciousness. By observing your behaviors, thoughts, and emotional reactions to your twin flame's absence, you begin to notice which aspects are in excess or lacking. Perhaps you refuse to take action for fear of rejection, revealing a fragile, underdeveloped animus. Or maybe you can't stop thinking about the other, waiting for them to return, exposing an unhealed, idealized anima trapped in passive romanticism. These distorted internal images must be confronted, understood, and transformed. This process requires an honest confrontation with the shadow, seeing where you outsource responsibility for your well-being, where you sabotage yourself out of emotional neediness, where you still hold on to childish expectations of love. Reunion with a twin flame cannot occur while there is internal division. The other can only approach when you are at peace with your own inner feminine and masculine, walking the balance between receptivity and action, feeling and deciding, dreaming and doing. The journey toward integration begins with small gestures, learning to care for yourself gently, without relying on another's presence to feel complete, developing your capacity to make firm decisions without external validation, cultivating silence and inner listening to recognize your intuition, but also allowing yourself to say no when necessary. All of this lays the foundation for a more whole self, and that whole self resonates with experiences that vibrate in integrity. As a woman develops her animus, she learns to assert herself, recognize her inner authority, and set boundaries. As a man heals his anima, he reconnects with his sensitivity, allowing true love to flow without fear of vulnerability. These internal shifts inevitably reflect in the outer world, creating the conditions for the twin flame's return, if it is the soul's will, to occur naturally, without manipulation or unrealistic expectations. At that point, love ceases to be neediness and becomes a conscious choice. When both internal poles are balanced, there is no more obsessive seeking, there is presence. Separation no longer hurts because it has been understood as necessary for both to evolve. And if reunion comes, it will no longer be out of necessity, but as mutual recognition of the wholeness achieved. Love, then, will no longer be an escape from emptiness, but a celebration of fullness. There is a time that cannot be measured by clock hands, or counted in days or months. It is the time of the soul. It flows in another dimension, where events unfold according to subtler laws that escape rational logic and ego anxieties. When a twin flame is distant, even more so if married to someone else, the mind collapses trying to predict, understand, control, or resist. But it is precisely at that point that the deepest call arises, to transcend the ego and trust the soul's movement. In Jung's view, the ego consciousness is only part of the psyche. The self, or the greater I, is the deepest regulating center of the soul, guiding the individuation journey. It is the self that orchestrates meetings, separations, experiences, and synchronicities to promote psychic wholeness. If the twin flame is with someone else, something is being gestated that cannot be rushed. There is a greater purpose at work, and it honors the symbolic timing of inner transformation. By nature, the ego seeks security, predictability, and control. It suffers when it cannot possess what it desires, But the soul, on the contrary, seeks experiences that lead to expansion, growth, and liberation from illusions. And often, the twin flame moves away precisely because the ego is still in charge. They leave so the self can emerge. They leave so love becomes a path to self-realization rather than needy dependence. It is important to understand that this soul timing is not passive but profoundly active. During this time, life invites you to rebuild yourself, heal your wounds, abandon repetitive relationship patterns, and break cycles of self-sabotage. It is in this silence that true reunion is born, one that need not be sought, for it happens by resonance at the exact moment both souls are ready to live a love no longer bound by childish projections. To transcend the ego in this process means relinquishing urgency, comparison, jealousy, blame, and constant doubt. It means looking at yourself with honesty and asking, what do I still need to mature within myself for this love to flourish healthily? Often that maturation requires letting the other go, not as surrender but as trust, allowing their soul to follow its own path, to undergo the experiences it still needs, to mature in its own timing. This is unconditional love, not attachment. This is the most delicate point in the twin flame journey. Trusting without expectation, loving without dependence, releasing without abandoning. It is a paradox that can only be grasped spiritually. Reunion happens not when you do everything right, but when you become whole. And that only becomes possible when the ego is humbled into service of the soul, not as master, but as instrument of higher consciousness. Jung taught that every individuation process involves crises, confrontations with the shadow, ego collapses, and psychic rebirths. Thus, the pain of separation is not a mistake in the journey, but part of it. It creates the internal conditions for you to awaken, rebuild, and access a level of consciousness your former self could never imagine. That is why many twin flame reunions only occur after long periods of silence, distance, or even dramatic ruptures. Not because love ended, but because it needed to be purified of fear, dependence, and illusion. The soul's timing respects a more sacred cycle. It moves from within outward, not the opposite. When you surrender to this timing, you begin to realize you are not waiting for the other to return. You are preparing your inner field so that, if it is the soul's plan, reunion will occur authentically, freely, and truly. This timing demands presence, not hurry. Faith not guarantees, surrender not proof. By transcending the ego, you not only draw closer to your twin flame, you reconnect with the purest essence of love, that which liberates, transforms, and unites, not through possession, but by soul truth. The twin flame journey is not linear, predictable, or comfortable. It is, above all, an inner crossing, a living mirror that compels us to dive into our shadows, integrate opposites, and rediscover our own soul. When that flame is married to someone else, the challenge intensifies, for life demands patience, detachment, and radical trust in the soul's timing. Yet it is precisely within this seeming chaos that true transformation unfolds. Separation is an invitation to healing, spiritual signs are path markers, and the integration of our inner feminine and masculine is the key that opens reunion's door. Reconnection only becomes possible when love ceases to be need and becomes consciousness. When you no longer expect salvation from another, but already recognize yourself as whole, the universe responds. If this content has touched your soul, subscribe to the channel now. Activate notifications to keep following deep reflections on love, the soul, and spiritual awakening. And don't miss the next video appearing here on your screen. It may be exactly what you need to hear today. Transform yourself. Reunion begins within you.